Okay, hi everyone. So it's SmithyQ from SmithyQ.com. We're back with the next installment of the opening survey. I'm really excited about this one because we're going to be covering what I considered basically to be a perfect opening, the Nimzo-Indian, or just the Nimzo for short. And what this opening does is, as we'll see when we look at this, it leads to imbalanced positions that are strategically complex, that are completely sound, that are dynamically even. So all this means is that we're getting these rich, imbalanced positions in which the better player then has ample scope to outplay their opponent. The better player is going to win, basically, and that's what history, theory, practice has shown. It's white doesn't have an advantage, black doesn't have an advantage. It's even, but it's complex. It's absolutely incredible. Um, there's only one problem with it, which would stop from being the super perfect opening, is that white can not let this opening happen. So the Nimzo, if white plays d4, and then plays c4, and then plays knight c3, we got the Nimzo and everything is great. Yes, we're happy. Unfortunately, white can, of course, just not play 1d4. Like, obviously, if white plays e4, it's not going to work. But even, c4, if you try and get into a Nimzo, white can then not play d4. You can play, like a pure English with a g3, or you could play something like this with e4, and then we're not in the Nimzo waters. And, it's the same thing, even if white plays, knight c3, or knight f3, or, whatever. There's so many different moves that white can play. And so this makes this opening slightly... This was certainly my experience. I really liked the Nimzo-Indian. I tried studying it for a little bit, and then no one would ever let me play the opening. They would play something else, and so I was like, why even bother? So that was... that's why I'm a little bit jaded about the opening, but I still think it's amazing. So anyway, let's actually look at some ideas. So the first thing, and the most important thing, has to do with the relationship between this bishop and this knight. Very, very likely there's going to be an exchange. In fact, let's just look at this. There's an exchange. And so this is already the first imbalance in the position, in which white has the two bishops. Yay, that's great. Unfortunately, he has double pawns. His pawn structure is a little bit worse. And the position isn't yet open up. There's been no pawn exchanges. And we know in blocked positions, the more closed the position, the better the knights are. And, well, black, he's got the two knights. And so then the question would then become, can white successfully open the position to let his bishops come out? Or are black's knights going to be able to find outposts and dominate? And the second problem, it concerns these pawns here. If I just were to show you a sample line, where black's strategy is often going to be something like this. As you can see, he put his bishop here, he put his knight here, and together they're both targeting this pawn. And then white might be forced to do something like this, and so white's pieces are passively defending the pawn, black's pieces are actively attacking the pawn. And black, he can play eventually c5, maybe not right now, but he can. He can play c5, get his pieces behind the c file, and get prepared to exchange, opening things up. If white ever pushes, that stops the c file from opening, but it's going to be further blockading the position. And then it's not going to be opened up, and again, his bishops aren't doing very much. You can see in this particular position, this bishop isn't very happy at all. The position's still a block. There's a lot of play left, but you can see this this general idea here of where black is immediately counterattacking this weak pawn. It's more so this pawn than it is this pawn. This pawn, or this square, is a very important square for black. If he can actually win the pawn, or if he doesn't win a pawn, he just gets a piece there, it can be extremely annoying for white. And so it's worthwhile just, as a Nimzo-Indian player, an idea to think about ideas like this. Bring the knight and the bishop, trying to attack. And so that there is the first imbalance. And that is really the main imbalance. It's going to be potentially double pawns, exchange for a bishop and a knight. What's going to happen? So this is the one. The second imbalance, maybe not imbalance, perhaps fight would be a better word, concerns this square. As you can see, black, maybe I'll color it red. maybe I'll color it red, excellent, is already attacking this square. White's trying to defend the square, but the bishop is pinning the knight. And then black, he will often try and target this square with his pieces. For instance, by playing b7, and instead of putting the bishop on a6, putting it on b7. Maybe I'll just throw something here. So if we were just looking at something like this, we can see that. And so the bishop is targeting here, the knight is targeting the square. Right now, white doesn't have anything that's actually hitting the square, and black is controlling it more. Black can further controlling it by playing d5, and he'll want to kick this bishop back at some point. But there we go. So that's white, black, sorry, is really trying to cover this very important square. If white is able to gain control of this square, and without costing any time, without costing any weaknesses, often white's just better, and then white is starting to push. Because then he's got a space advantage to go along with the two bishops, and things are great. So, from here, we're going to look at a couple of lines, a couple of ideas. And there's really, both sides have a certain amount of say in the position. You could think about it in sort of like it's a radio. So white, he's able to determine, you know, the style of music, whether it's rock or blues or jazz or something. But black is able to determine the exact specific song, or the artist, if you will. So here, white has a couple of general plans. For instance, there's the one we just looked at with queen c2. The idea with queen c2 is that after the exchange, we're going to recapture with the queen. So that way there's no double pawns, and that's the big advantage for white, is that compared to the other positions, he doesn't have to worry about those double pawns. The disadvantage is that he is moving the queen early, and the queen's moving multiple times, and so he's falling a little bit behind in development. And so white, he's saying, I want to have a good structure, and so that's sort of the type, or the genre, if you will. And black can decide how he wants to counter against this. Let's look at the possibility we just looked at, actually, where we just castle, then he's able to play that b6, bishop b7, and he's using his pieces to target the pawn. That's one possibility. But there's something completely different that he can do as well. For instance, in this position, he could play with knight e4. This is something that I used to play when I played the Nimzo, with the idea of, after the queen moves, to now play f5. And this position is now resembling a Dutch, which we'll get to in a later video. The knight is on that e4 square, the pawn's controlling e4, and the general plan would then be to play b6, bishop e7, so look at this. Bishop hitting at e4, it's also aiming at the queen side. Knight's nice and protected. Generally something like this is going to happen, where everything is great. Now it's true that at any point, white could try and play f3, but with this king still in the center, that opens up to potential queen h4 check ideas, and he does want to play f3 and e4, but he wants to make sure his king is safe first. If he tries to make his king safe first, though, that gives black a chance to fully consolidate. There's also some really fun ideas, especially if white just puts his knight on f3, being able to play g5, g4, bring the rook up like this, coming up over here, and just going absolutely, you can see how everything is actually aimed. You want to wait till white actually castles. But this is the idea, and this is what I really enjoyed about playing this particular position, is getting this sort of Dutch-like position, where white, if you know anything about the Dutch, white generally, one of the main lines is he plays g3 and puts the bishop on g2, and this secures white's king side a lot better, right? There's a permanent defender. If we look at this position again, we can see he doesn't have that defender. So when he castles, black's attack is a little bit stronger than it would be in many standard Dutch lines. That's what I loved about this. And I had some pretty good results when white allowed me to play the Nimzo. But you can see how this is completely different, right? The other one, there was no knight e4, there was no pawn on f5, and black is sort of fighting for e4, you know, indirectly. Here, black has moved f5. He's creating some weaknesses around his king, but he's thinking about attacking a little bit. It's a different, you know, idea again. And then further, even here, instead of castling, we can continue with d5. And this could lead to a different position where, let's just look at this, we take with the queen. And I really like this position because it really shows, again, those the imbalances potentially in this position. Let's just look at, a sample variation. So here again, white, he saved his structure, and he's got the 2 bishops. That's great. But black, he's going to be able to play bishop b7. This bishop is extremely good. His queen is dominant in the center. The knight can come into e4 as well. We can imagine this knight coming here, or maybe we play c5. The knight comes that way. And black has a lot of this activity, immediate activity. His pieces can really move. At the same time, white, he has the 2 bishops. He has no structural weaknesses. And if he can start pushing back the black pieces, if black cannot actually use his activity to do anything, then white's going to consolidate, he'll eventually open the position, and his bishops are going to dominate. But right now, both of those possibilities are open. It's like the Schrodinger's cat, right? Is white better, is black better? We'll find out. It's a completely, again, different way of black playing. And so we had the idea of him staying behind and kind of attacking the center from afar. We had the Dutch-style idea. We have this idea. Maybe you can call it the Scandinavian-like idea because the queen is centralized early, but there's no easy way to attack it right away. And if there is, the queen can slide over here towards the queen side. And again, nice active piece play. So white, he was able to, he made the decision early on. He wants to keep his pawn structure. And he's done that. You can see that across all the variations that there's, he doesn't have the weakened pawn structure. But black, he has many different ideas to fight against that. And there are so many more. But I don't want to make this a 6-hour video, so we'll just stop there. So that's one idea, where white can, again, he's trying to keep his pawn structure at the cost of potentially losing time and giving black this different active possibilities. The second most popular move, or maybe they're like the most popular moves from white, is to essentially ignore that. He's just going to play e3. This is known as the Rubinstein variation. And the idea is to just not fall behind in time, to finish development, opt in with some combination of bishop e3, knight f3, and then castle, and then worry about what to do. Simple, solid position. He's almost certainly going to get the 2 bishops, and then things are going to be great. He's going to see what's going to happen from there. In these particular positions, very often, it's black is going to be inflicting the double pawns, and so it's going to be different ways of trying to take advantage of that. So we could look at a sample variation. So again, a3, let's just imagine we got castle, bishop d3. Let's look at the c5 break first. And so then this is going to lead to a very different type of position. Knight f3, let's just look at this, take, d6, and the idea here is to reach a position like this. Sorry, let me just back up. And so what black has done is that he's taken his dark squared bishop right here, right, and he's exchanging it. That leaves him with only a light square bishop. And so what the strategic idea of this particular variation is to put all the pawns on dark squares. And not only that, look at this. There's this pawn chain here stuck in the middle. And so this bishop is staring at white pawns. It's not very good. Versus, well, it's not good. It's by definition a bad bishop. Whereas black's bishop, it's absolutely fantastic. It can move anywhere. If he wants to, he can exchange it, or he can just keep it, because again, it's strategically his good bishop. He can put all of his pawns on dark squares, and then move the bishop over here as well, trying to attack the pawn, like in the variation we looked earlier. Or he can use this bishop to help prepare eventual pawn breaks, like with f5. And so he's putting his pawns on dark squares, and it's blockading the position, so hopefully black's knights are able to do something in this position, and white's pieces can't. Complex position. I appreciate the subtlety of this position, of, okay, exchanging the dark square bishop and then putting all your pawns on dark squares. I've tried playing it a few times. I've never had very good results, just because it's a really blocked, closed position, and I don't really like blocked, closed positions like this. But we can see this is one way of playing. Now contrast that, all right, with something different. Let's say instead of playing with c5, we play with d5. And then we could just look at a sample variation like this. Now here comes c5. And so what's going to happen, let's just do this for clarity, is the structure is completely different. We've got an isolated queen pawn. And so this is going to be very active piece play for black. He's going to jump in. Black wasn't forced to actually give up the 2 bishops. In exchange, black does have a slightly weaker pawn, the isolated pawn, but he's got excellent activity for it. Also, look, this bishop from for white, it's stuck behind this pawn, and so white does have an actual structural advantage, at least a little bit, but black has lots of activity, and they've shown that, again, just like everything else in the Nimzo, this position is dynamically equal. It's neither side yet has the advantage. It's the resulting play that's going to determine whether this pawn is weak or whether it's strong and it's supporting black's piece activity. About whether white can consolidate and win in the endgame and pressure it, or if black's middle game pressure is just going to work. Again, completely different way of playing. And so that was the 2 main lines. We have the e3, where black is going to inflict the double pawns. We have the queen c2 where white doesn't. And there's also ideas where white just doesn't care. For instance, directly playing with f3. And this will generally lead to something, let's see, like this. Take. No, that's not right. Shoot, I forgot my theory. One second. All right, sorry about that. And so it's better to actually double check what you're talking about rather than just ad-libbing and hoping you're right. In this particular line, so again, f3, and the idea of f3 is simply to take complete control of e4. Not let black get any of those knights or bishops or whatever, just immediately clamping down. And then there's actually a variation, mainline theory here, instead of taking right away, is actually with a3. And if we could just, again, look at the completely different nature of this position, where, okay, black is going to inflict the double pawns, and then imagine just this following variation. And so white is temporarily up a pawn. Maybe even he can keep that pawn. The thing is, those pawns are incredibly ugly, extremely weak. We can also see that black's knight is currently the best piece on the board. White has no development, and he has to be extremely careful about potential ideas like this. Also, again, black's going to castle in 1 move. White is multiple moves away from castling. Gotta be careful. And again, if black can just win back the pawn, maybe things are great. Maybe white can hang on to the pawn. And actually, it can be not so simple to win the pawn back in certain variations. Or white can force black to waste time to win the pawn back to complete his development. And again, he does have the 2 bishops in a more open position. e4 is probably going to come to kick the knight out. And that might allow, bishop e4 check or knight e2 or what have you. And so very, again, a very different position. And this is one of those things that just makes the Nimzo-Indian so interesting, is that there are so many different variations, so many different ideas that are all quite distinct from each other. Where, it's hard to believe that this particular position, and then, this position, and, this position, and we could even imagine, this position, are all from the same opening. There's so much diversity. So, again, playing this will give you an incredible understanding about chess in general. It's that one-stop shop. From here, actually, I should have mentioned this earlier. I'll just back up all the way. So this is from the queen c2 line with b6. And this is always sort of my preferred way of playing this type of... when I wasn't playing the knight e4 and the f5 with the Dutch, is that there's always this wonderful idea of being able to play with d6, knight d7, and c5. Because this setup of pieces, white cannot really stop. You can do it against almost all the move orders, actually. And it's an easy way of getting a neural position. And then from here, again, we can put our queen on one of these squares. We can push with e5, because again, all of our pawns are on dark squares then. which is fine. We could think about exchanging and pushing in with d5 instead, trying to do things this way. You know, put the rook against the queen, just push him back, and everything is okay. The last thing I want to cover, actually, just very, very quickly, would be the lines with an early bishop to g5. Because when I was first learning the Nimzo, these lines were often dismissed, and I wasn't completely sure why, because it seems as if black is going to be exchanging his bishop for the knight, then doesn't this pin just look really, really, really good? The nice thing is that, well, we can simply challenge the bishop right away. Excuse me. White has a bit of a dilemma. He doesn't really want to take, because then he loses the two bishop advantage, right? Imagine a position like this. He simply has double pawns. He simply has a worse structure with no two bishops. That's not very good, right? And so he wants to generally move the bishop back. If he doesn't, you know, moves it somewhere here, then he's not using advantage of the pin. Black's got h6 for free. If he moves back here, then there's these very interesting positions in which, well, it looks like he's going to lose the two bishops regardless. There's also pressure here. However, again, there's that imbalance. Is that these pawns here, are they strong or are they weak? It looks like white might be able to target them, especially if black castle kingside. What if black doesn't castle kingside? What if he just uses them as a pawn avalanche, similar to the Dutch defense variations we looked at, and the pawns are just coming very, very quickly? Interesting dynamic position. Which again is it's a lot different from most of the other variations that we have looked at. And again, this just highlights the incredible rich complexity that exists. And there are so many different ideas in the that I haven't even touched on. In fact, just 1 second quickly. Okay, so I'm back. This here is, let's see if I can hold it up. There we go. Play the Nimzo-Indian Defense by Gligerich. It is by, even though, you know, it's like, I don't know, 30 years out of date at this point, it doesn't really matter, because the way this book is organized is it's all about the different plans, these different setups with example games of how black can react to different white strategies, how white can counterattack, and so it's very, very idea-based and less so theory-based. And if you were to just look at the table of contents, and there are... It doesn't actually list them. Does he list the chapter name? No. But there is about, let's see, 5, 10... There's about 20 different variations, 20 different setups, which is essentially 20 different black plans, if you will, all starting, right, from various move orders from this position, which again just shows the absolute complexity. If you ever see this at a used bookstore, just hold it up again, buy it. I got it for $5 apparently, and it's like so good, right? It's also completely out of print, and that's unfortunate. But by far the best book I've ever read on the Nimzo-Indian defense. Again, detailing those ideas, absolutely fantastic. So get that book somehow, find it. Scourge the used bookstores. I'm going to cut it short there. Short, I know it's like 25 minutes. But I just really want to highlight those rich ideas. There's so much going on that can go on this position. And as black, you can really pick and choose how you want to play. There really are variations for all seasons. A fantastic, beautiful opening. Check it out. Again, the only downside is that white can just not let you play this. You know, that's kind of a kick in the butt. Anyway, that's that. I'm happy I got this out before I'm back. I'm going to try and get one more of these opening survey videos out, but then you probably won't see me till after exams. So I guess Happy New Year in advance, everyone. Anyway, so comments, criticisms, let me know. I really love this opening. Let me know your favorite games, and maybe I'll do a couple of game analysis in the future that stem from this opening. Otherwise, that's it. SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.